Whenever you first decided to start playing Siege, I'm sure attacking seemed quite overwhelming. There is a ton of knowledge required to be good at attacking that spans across multiple topics, which can leave you feeling overwhelmed quite easily. However, by the end of this video, I'll provide you with the knowledge necessary to not only understand the basics, but to also thrive at nearly every skill level. Now let's go ahead and get into the video. Before we can even discuss the more complex topics when it comes to attack, you need to first understand the actual goal of the attackers. Now, depending on how new you are to the game, you may think that the goal of the attackers is to eliminate the defenders. And while that isn't necessarily false, there is much more to attacking that you are missing. The actual goal of the attackers is to take map control and clear defender utility, so that way they can get the plant down. If you aren't contributing to that goal of getting the diffuser down, then you are attacking incorrectly. I've pushed this point a lot throughout my videos covering nearly every topic, but it's true. Your KD doesn't matter. What does is getting the plant down and winning the round. And getting kills can lead you to those goals, but it shouldn't be your primary focus. Now that you understand your goal, I'm sure you're now wondering how to accomplish that. Well, I'll be helping you learn by discussing the 6 most important aspects of attacking. The first is the operator roles on the attack. The second is team composition. The third is communication. The fourth is leadership. The fifth is discussing the prep phase. The sixth is roam clearing. And the seventh is site execution. I'll be going through all of these one by one. Timestamps will be in the description to allow myself to go more in depth on these topics, and hopefully by the end of it you'll have a deeper understanding of the most important topics of an attack. Now let's start out with the roles. This will dictate your entire play style, from your operator picks, your level of aggression, and pretty much everything you'll be doing in a round. Most of these roles are defined by the operators within them. For example, Maverick could be considered by most to be a support operator, while Iana is a fragging operator. When playing support, as the name would suggest, your entire goal is to support your team by providing a ton of utility. Examples of operators that fall into this category are virtually all hard breachers, Montaigne, and operators for gadget denial like Thatcher, Twitch, and Flores. Typically, while playing these operators, you will be taking a minimal amount of gunfights each round because their gadgets are essential for the team's success, and losing them early could seal your team's fate in losing. Also, since most support operators don't have the best weapons available, you typically want to let your fragging teammates do the work since they have a higher chance of winning a gunfight. Now, this doesn't mean support players just sit around and do nothing all game. They will just end up doing something similar, that being droning in the entry fraggers of the team, which I'll go more in depth on later in the video. But to get the basic gist, if you play a support operator, you can't die early, so you've got to focus on supporting your team so that way you can survive long enough to use your gadget. Now, when discussing entry fraggers, a lot of people believe that they are meant to get kills. However, these people forget that entry is in their name. When playing these operators, your top priority should be to take map control for your team and to be the guy on the front lines. This is due to the fact that most entry fragging operators have gadgets that don't matter as much compared to a support operator or a flex operator, and they have great weapons to boot as well, which gives them a massive advantage in fights compared to the rest of their team. You can get away with losing an entry early on without it necessarily affecting your round very much because of this. Examples of entry fraggers include Ash, Zofia, Lion, and Jackal, just to name a few. Now, to explain flex operators, they are, to put it simply, any operator that doesn't fit into the category of fragger or support. Some examples of this can include Finka, Gridlock, Nomad, Grim, or Blitz. Now, these kinds of operators typically don't have one particular playstyle throughout the round. They just fill in the holes left in your roster with utility and manpower that other operators can't fill. For example, if you need to overwhelm the bomb site so that way you can execute and go for a plant, Grim's your guy. If you need an operator to play vertically above the site, pick Ram. I think you get the idea. These are the 3 main concrete roles that you'll most commonly hear discussed when thinking of the attack. But there's still one more role that doesn't really apply to operators, but rather the person playing them. This role is the IGL, or in-game leader. The in-game leader's job is to lead his team by making decisions on the fly on where to attack from, what operators to bring, when to rotate, and when to execute onto the site. Basically, think of an IGL as the headmaster of his team. This isn't a concept exclusive to the attack, but I'll go more in depth on the concept of leadership on the attack later in this video. Just knowing of the role's existence, though, is important to put the rest of this video into context. Anyways, now that you understand all the roles that make up the attacking side, it is now time to discuss what your lineup should look like. Lineups on attack are mostly subjective, and you must adapt them to what the enemy team is bringing. In general, a safe bet is to have 2 support operators, 2 entry fraggers, and 1 flex. However, you can mix things up by bringing more of a specific role if the situation calls for it. But as a general rule, you never want to have more than 2 entry fragging operators. Too many of them can result in your team having lots of gaps in utility, which in most cases can stop you from executing on a site. Now, if you were to look at a typical round for me and my group, we like to bring 1 to 2 hard breachers, 2 to 3 flex operators, and 1 fragger. Now, as I've said in this video, these picks are never set in stone. You should always be adapting your lineup based on what the defenders bring, but generally that's what me and my team go with unless something requires additional resources, which is the reason why you should try to get as much info as you can on the defense setup in the prep phase. You should always be adapting your lineup based on what the defenders bring. But if you don't know what the enemy team is bringing, then following these general guidelines can make for sure you are caught off guard and you have enough tools to tackle most of what the defense could throw at you. Anyways, it is now time to move on to communication. A lot of newer players don't understand what, when, or how to communicate important information to their team, and this is by no means an attack specific problem, but it is amplified by the level of teamwork required to pull off an attacking round. When playing, you need to be calling out just about everything that's important. You breach a wall, let your team know. You destroy an important piece of utility, let them know. If you change positions, call it out. Any amount of information you can give your teammates could help them visualize what is going on in the round, and it could mean the difference between them losing a gunfight or not. Also, you and your team need to adapt throughout the round. If you notice that your plan isn't working and you think that you should divert to something else, don't be afraid to say that. I've lost too many rounds in ranked from stubbornly continuing a plan even though it isn't working. Now, another important aspect of communication is droning. This is something a lot of people just don't use. Whether this is due to laziness or just lack of understanding, you need to be droning as much as you can, especially when entering a new area of the map. And when droning, you need to be checking every corner of the room. This includes rat spots like underneath tables and in dark corners. If you lazily drone a room in an attempt to be quick, it opens the opportunity for a defender to be hiding somewhere you missed. Also, when droning, you need to position yourself where you can capitalize on any intel you gather. This means you shouldn't be droning something on the opposite side of the map from yourself, unless you have teammates there ready to act. A typical rule that I suggest following is to drone only 2 or 3 rooms ahead of yourself or a teammate, because if you drone any farther out and you find a defender, you won't be able to do anything about it, and they will likely have time to reposition or run away before you or your teammates are ever able to get over and capitalize on the intel you gather. So make for sure that your team is positioned in the best way possible so that way you can capitalize on the intel you gather. But the final thing I want to discuss when it comes to communication is keeping a level head. A lot of players get easily angry if they begin losing, and many of them will begin to blame their team or even get toxic on comms. I don't care how bad your teammate is, don't get mad at them, especially in game chat. Not only will it cause you to play worse, but it will also affect your team's mentality, basically guaranteeing that you lead your team to a loss. Speaking of leading your team to a loss, I now want to discuss leadership to make you better understand what leadership looks like in Siege and how to lead your team effectively. Leadership is something that only really applies to players who are consistently playing in a team or a group, but there are a few lessons every kind of player can learn from this topic. If you're going to attempt to lead your team or recommend how your team should proceed, you need to be 100% certain that you have enough information in that round to make that decision. This can be done by creating a mental map of every piece of information you gather in a round and putting that information on said map. The location of enemies, their gadgets, and the location of your teammates is crucial information to have on this map. And as you compile more and more information, you can begin to notice massive flaws in the enemy setup, and you can point your team accordingly. However, if you make the wrong calls or if you go a little overboard by backseat gaming, then you can end up causing your team to trust your input less and less. So there is a fine line to walk. Overall though, even if you don't plan on trying to lead your team and you don't have any interest in being an in-game leader, being good at being able to draw a mental map in your head and jot down information and callouts that you get throughout a round can be absolutely huge for your ability to make proper plays and to capitalize on the enemy team's weaknesses. Now, every attack round begins with the prep phase. Obviously, during the prep phase, the attackers don't have a bomb site to set up, but their goal is to gather as much intel as possible without sacrificing drone economy. You want to gather intel about where the bomb site is, what operators they're bringing, so that way you can adjust your lineup accordingly, as mentioned earlier, and so you can decide where to push from. Remember that the attackers are meant to counter what the defenders are bringing. Once you've gathered the intel you desperately needed for planning, you should either hide your drone somewhere near where you plan on entering the map, or hide your drone on a common choke point or in the bomb site to gather intel late round, or you should drive it back outside to your spawn so that you can pick it up and use it. Drones are extremely important and you don't want to lose any early on. By making for sure you save it for later in the round, you will have more crucial information throughout the round and your drone economy will stretch out for later into the round. Moving on from the prep phase, it is now time to discuss roam clearing. This task, especially if you're solo queuing, is likely the hardest part of a round for the attackers because they have little control and they must have impeccable teamwork to be successful. You need to have your drone work, callouts, and positioning on point if you want to successfully clear a decent roamer. Any mistake can easily throw the round for your team and the match entirely. So if you use the skills I taught you earlier, you should be fine at roam clearing as long as you're droning properly, communicating with your team, and your gunfight skills are on point. But some operators can make that task even easier for you. For example, bringing a Jackal or a Deimos can allow you to track roamers down and dispatch them easily. So if you believe that roam clearing will be a pivotal part of your attack, bringing a tracking operator can be huge for your success. However, something a lot of people don't understand is when roam clearing is needed. Time is against you as an attacker, so you only want to clear parts of the map that are absolutely necessary. Anything else could waste valuable time that could be used to execute on the site. However, if you don't clear enough of the map, then the enemy team can easily flank you and negate all of the map control you've gotten. Typically, you should only be spending time roam clearing an area if it's necessary for your plan of attack. If it isn't, then you can use drones to watch those non-necessary areas for you, especially if you have dead teammates that are capable of staying on those cams for you. Now, once you've successfully roam cleared, it is now time to push on to the bomb site. This is where an excellent attacking round can easily slip through your fingertips and where you can turn around a push that seemed all but over. Typically, when executing on the site, depending on how long it took for you to roam clear and open any surfaces you may need, you will only have a minute or so on the clock at most, and you will have likely lost a couple of teammates by that point. But don't let that get to your head. You need to stay calm in these situations because Siege is a mental game after all. If you aren't confident, you will lose your gunfights. When you start executing on the site, your top priority is to burn a lot of utility out of the defense. If they have a plant denial operator like Echo or Maestro, or an area denial operator like Smoke or Goyo, you will need to either bait out or destroy their gadgets so that way you can plant safely. Same thing goes for any nitro cells the defenders may have. Then when it comes time to go for the plant, this is where you need to throw anything you've got at the defense. You can use any smoke grenades you have left to cover the plant, any flashbangs that mask the sound of the plant, and you can also use any leftover utility you may have to prevent the defenders from stopping the plant. For example, a well-placed Asus shield can allow your team to plant behind cover, a ram drone can cover the sound of the plant, stopping the defense from even knowing it's happening, and some leftover yin candelas can cause chaos on the site and distract them from the diffuser. Basically, if you have any utility left that can be used, you should be using it here because once the plant goes down, the round is basically over, and all of that utility you had saved up will go to waste otherwise. Now, once the plant is actually down, the post plant begins. During the post plant, you should play as passively as possible. Set up a drone that can see the diffuser and hold a passive angle in a different room. This allows your team to give you as much intel as possible on the remaining defenders while you are in safety. You can also work together with a teammate to hold a cross on the diffuser, all but guaranteeing your win. Anyways, that about wraps up today's video. Let me know if this video helped you out or if you have any tips of your own for up and coming players in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's video, I make Siege content just like this twice a week, so go subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter if you don't want to miss the next upload. If you want to watch another video just like this one, a video will be popping up on your screen right now that I'm sure you'll all enjoy. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.